Welcome to episode 1 of the weekly workout wrap. Yes, I did choose a title that would be hard to say. The weekly workout wrap is my attempt at recording all of my thoughts, my feelings and my findings throughout my training. Now, I'm an aspiring athlete running anything from the 5k up to the marathon. At the moment, my attention is kind of on the half marathon / marathon distance. But as we move through the winter here in Australia into the spring, I hope to bring some more shorter distance content. In this series, I just hope to cover weekly training, week after week, covering all topics of how I'm finding new pairs of shoes that I'm running in, how shoes are aging, cover the tech that I'm enjoying wearing whilst running, and just generally how I feel like I am, responding to the training that I'm doing mentally and physically. At the moment, I am working with a coach. For those of you that have watched my videos before, you'll know that I've worked with TSRC throughout my last couple of marathon builds. That's the Tony Smith Running Club here in Australia. You can find out Tony's information down below. But I'll be working with Tony over the next 16 weeks or so as I build for my next marathon. And diving into this week, I haven't done too much running myself, but that kind of segues nicely into other things that I'd like to include in this training series, which kind of includes books that I'm enjoying reading that may or may not be about running. I've got a book here by Danny Dreyer called Chi Running from the early 2000s. I've just had a flick through this so far, but it seems really interesting. Focusing more on, the spiritual essence that we can find in running. Maybe there is a bit more of the rhythmic breath quality that can easily be overlooked. And another book that I've really enjoyed reading is David Goggins' Goggins' new book, I loved Can't Hurt Me, and now just flicking through the first couple of chapters I've never finished. I can tell this is one that I'm going to enjoy. But as we go through the weeks, I'd love to just pull out sticky notes from these books and just to talk you guys through some things that I've enjoyed from my findings. But I'd also like to talk through some running news. So not only professional running news, but just things that are happening in the running world that I feel like could be interesting to you guys. So over the last 6 weeks or so, I have been recovering from my last marathon. I ran the Port Fairy Marathon here in Australia in Feb of 2023? Yeah, February. And it is now early April in 2023, and I've taken a good amount of time to recover from my marathon and to actually do a great bit of traveling with my family who came to visit me here in Australia. We did a really lovely road trip covering around 5,000 kilometers. So it was definitely a whistle stop tour of quite a few places, but yeah, absolutely beautiful tour. And during that time, I've actually spent a lot of time watching shoe reviews here on YouTube. Now, there's been some massive releases already this year. While I was training for the Port Fairy Marathon, which began back in sort of October 2022, I was hearing a lot about these upcoming shoe releases and I was really excited for them. And I'd already kind of made up my mind for what I would be running in for my marathon shoe. I was pretty confident it would be the Vaporfly 2, just a shoe that I've actually PB'd in every distance in. I love the Alphafly, I love the Saucony Endorphin Pro 2, but for me, I feel like carbon shoes, I do like this a little bit more of a softer foam. I like something a little bit more minimal as opposed to the Alphafly, let me say. And I feel like this was the shoe for me, but I was really excited about all the upcoming releases that were coming in early 2023. Now, during my 6 weeks away, as I say, I've been watching loads of videos and I've actually just been watching these shoes sell out really fast and actually come back up on second-hand markets, really expensive. And it kind of got me thinking, the new technology that comes out, not only in running shoes, but also running watches, also running clothing. I just kind of wonder how much evolution there really is between each model. Now, I never ran in the Vaporfly 1 or the Vaporfly 4%, but I heard they were fantastic shoes. But I think really when it comes down to it, I wouldn't be that surprised seeing the 2024 Olympics next year. Loads of people wearing shoes like this, the Vaporfly 2. And maybe there'll be a Vaporfly 4 out by then, who knows? But I just feel like when a shoe comes along that is really good, like this one, I think we could all agree, that, really how much more evolution is there beyond that point that is kind of warranting the price tag, or maybe even the weighting, or maybe even spending upwards of double the retail price just to get your hands on a copy of the shoe. Now, it's just really interesting. I think that is definitely something up for debate. And I've got some prices here actually from some shoes that I've been thinking about buying myself that I haven't bought yet. Hence me talking about a Vaporfly 2 that is quite outdated at this point. I believe this is a 2021 colorway. I might be wrong, but I'll tell you what I paid for this shoe after I run through some figures, right, that I've just found on Google. So here in Australia, so for a pair of the Vaporfly 3 that come out just a few weeks ago now here in Australia, did sell out very quickly here, and that retailed for $330. And then coming in slightly under is the Mizuno Wave Rebellion Pro, a shoe that was super hyped up, and I actually know some runners here on YouTube that have absolutely loved this shoe. They came in at £320. It's a great looking shoe, haven't got to run in it yet, but I've heard great things. Just slightly under the price of that Vaporfly, but definitely no easy feat. You know, to be paying $320 for a shoe is a lot of money. You know, considering I've got a pair here of Saucony Ride 15s. This is just a daily trainer. I do believe that the Ride 16 is actually out. Maybe that's out very soon, but I picked up this shoe, I think, for about $70. So really you're looking at what, basically 3.5 times the cost of a daily training. That's probably going to get me about 700 Ks of quality running for, you know, a race day shoe that probably won't last as long. That is quite a big ask, to be honest. But rounding off my list, I've got the Saucony Endorphin Elite, $380. Oh my goodness, it is a crazy amount of money for a shoe. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure it's a fantastic shoe. It looks absolutely ridiculous. It looks mean, it looks fast, but come on, $380. Like, bearing in mind, a race entry here in Australia for a marathon is like $140 at the highest end. $140, and then that is literally like a third of the cost of a pair of racing shoes. It just seems a little bit crazy to me. Now, if you are in the market for a pair of new carbon shoes, and if you are someone that, you know, like myself, I've bought a pair of these Vaporfly 2s for retail. I've spent this price in the past. I'm absolutely saying you're not wrong to do that, but I think just be aware there are other options if you are being mindful of money, which I'm sure most of us are. So just to, I guess, kind of summarize where I'm going here, those shoes, the Vaporfly 3, $330, Wave Rebellion Pro, $320, Endorphin Elite by Saucony, $380. It's a lot of money. Now, I went into the Nike factory store, the outlet store, here in Adelaide just a few weeks ago now, and I picked up this pair of Vaporfly 2s in completely new condition. They came in the box with the tags on. I picked them up for $150, which equates to about £80, 80 British pounds, probably about 85 or 90 US dollars. Now, as I say, I have in the past paid about 3 times that price for the same pairs of shoes. For the same pair of shoes. Now, that was when the Vaporfly 2 came out, and I was actually just really excited to get my hands on a pair, and I believe I spent something like £240. Now, it was a lot of money at the time, and I definitely felt it in the bank account, but I will say that I feel like that shoe was worth it. Now, is this shoe worth £80, £85, what I paid the other day? It absolutely is. Now, I know I run a lot of miles, I've got some marathons coming up, I've got some halves, and actually I know that I benefit from having a fresh pair of Vaporflies. I've got a pair that have done about 500k, I've done a pair that have done about 300, and now I've got a fresh pair. These have done about 3k, and I just feel like actually it's a bit overkill to have, you know, several pairs of carbon shoes, but when it comes down to it, I can actually afford to have a fresh pair if it's costing me only that price tag, as I say, about $155. Had I gone out and bought all of those Vaporfly 2s at retail price, there's no way I could afford it. There's no way that I could afford to pick up other daily runners when they're on sale. There's no way that I'd be able to use the kind of nutrition that I use on marathon day, because my running would just stretch my budget way too far. Now, I do think that there needs to be a change in the running industry. I do think that the cost of shoes is becoming astronomical, and we're lucky here in Australia because it does seem that the retail cost of these shoes is significantly cheaper than the retail cost in the US and the UK. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's just a supply and demand thing. But I do just think it's becoming not accessible to actually pick up a pair of these shoes brand new, at least in my own opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts, guys. Let me know down in the comments what you think of the rising price of running shoes. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm sure the Saucony Endorphin Elites are amazing, but $380, like, that's a crazy amount of money. I can fly to Sydney and back for that. It's just madness, but you tell me. Now, as I mentioned, this is the first episode of the weekly workout wrap, and I'm yet actually to do any training for my next race, which will be a half marathon. Now, I can announce now that my next race will be on the 28th of May here in Australia. I'll be running the Barossa half marathon, pictured there. I've never done this race before. I'm super excited to do it. I've got some friends running the full marathon on the day. But yeah, I'm just super excited to get down to the Barossa and just put in a good time. I'm not going to taper for this race. This will just, I guess, be a training run for me as part of my build. But I will be announcing my next races and my marathon in August very soon on the channel. Stay tuned for that. But as we haven't done any running this week, I thought let's take us back to the last bit of running that I did. And this was actually just coming up to 3 weeks after my last marathon, and I had booked in to run a 5K event here in South Australia. Now, I'd booked myself in, I guess, kind of on a whim, thinking that, yeah, the legs might pull up well, I might be good mentally to go again after that hard marathon effort, that big PB that I ran, just over 10 minutes. And I might be able to pull something out the bag here, hopefully a 5K PB. And I was feeling really good until the start line of the race. So let me walk you through what happened. The race was on a Sunday, and the weather forecast was due to be about 18 degrees. Nothing too warm. I've trained in upwards of 20 degrees, 30 degrees during my marathon build, done some quality speed sessions in that weather, never had any issues. But on this day, I turned up to the start line and it was easily a bit more like 22 degrees. It was warm, there was pretty direct sunlight, and there was a pretty mean and warm headwind coming down our way. So I was running on a lapped course. It was 4 laps, about 1.2k per lap. And the course, there was a really, I guess, nice amount of headwind going up, and there was a nice amount of tailwind coming back. But what this made for was almost, well, I guess quite a challenging proposition to actually keep hold of your pace during this time. Now, for a 5K, I've since spoken to my coach and he's reassured me that actually the 5K is a distance that you can easily get wrong had you not nailed in that pace beforehand. So I was going for a pace that was slightly quicker than my PB. I was hoping for around 3:15 per kilometre, and based on how easy my marathon pace felt and how good my threshold zone got during my marathon build, essentially just how hard I could work keeping my heart rate at a controllable level, I felt confident to actually go out and execute this race at about that 3:15. But what I didn't account for was that actually the first, let's say 800 meters, kilometer, was actually going to be into headwind around quite a tight bend and then with tailwind. So during this time, I got wrapped up in a group of runners that were running significantly faster than me, and I just thought, let's try and stick with them early stages, settle into that pace. At one point I looked down at my watch, maybe 300 or 400 meters into the race. I never like to look too early, but I looked down and I saw about 3:08 per kilometer, and I knew this was way too fast. And I was actually doing this running into headwind, so I was aware this isn't ideal. I've gone out very hard, I'm running hot, it's going to be hard to cool down from here. It was when we came around the bend and we went over sort of the first kilometre, my watch beeped 3:15. That's a bit more like the kind of pace that I want to be hitting. But I didn't account at this point, just as I've got into a nice rhythm, that I was watching my average pace of my run just slightly climb. I thought that's okay. But as we came around this bend to start the second lap of the race, I was then confronted with more headwind, more sun. The pack that I was chasing had left me at this point. I was running on my own. I was being caught by the guys behind, and my average pace was just going up and up and up into the 320s, and I was just getting hotter and hotter. And at this point I realised that I'd gone out just way too hard. I hadn't actually found a group to run with. I probably should have been with the guys behind me, but I was in this awkward in-between phase where I'd already pulled off. Coming back would be hard, and actually maybe sticking to these guys would be even harder. So I made the decision to just stick where I am, forget about the pace, let's just run this next lap to fill, which I did. And I have to say that when I thought that upping my cadence, just smoothing my form, just making sure my arms were reaching back nicely, my knees were coming up, all of that good stuff, when I focused on keeping my head straight, composing myself, my breath, everything just kind of went out the window. And actually I felt like I was working harder and harder and running through syrup. it was just getting really hard. Now I reassured myself at this point that actually this is just blowing the cobwebs out. I did my last race 3 weeks ago and everything's gonna come together. I had the brand new Vaporfly 2s on. Literally, I'd done probably a 2 or 3K warm up in these, did some strides, and then I was racing. And these shoes were brand new. And I looked down at them and I thought, come on, let's it. I've got power here. I've got lots of energy return. Let's just put it in, not long to go now. So as I came through the second lap, completed the second lap, that was when I looked up the road. Ahead of me, I saw the guys that I was chasing, and I thought, forget about the time. Let's just put in a solid effort here. And it was here that I realised things weren't quite right, and actually I probably wasn't as prepared for this race as I thought beforehand. So as I was looking up the road, I was aware that my vision was slightly blurring and something wasn't entirely right here. And actually I was feeling really thirsty and just fatigued. And unsurprisingly, this was the point where my body took me out of the race. And the next thing I knew, I was laying down on the ground with my head on my hands on my head, I should say, and breathing very heavily. Now, I do believe that this was just a fatigue response to the, I guess, amount of energy and effort that I was exerting, putting my body through. I haven't had this in training before, but then again, I haven't really worked too much above my threshold zone. But on this day, I was giving it 100%. I wasn't looking at my heart rate. At this point, I'd forgotten all about my pace. I just wanted to put the effort in, and I just slightly misjudged it. Now, at the time I was quite concerned. What has my body done? My vision was blurred. I don't recall sitting down on the road calling it quits, but at some point or another, my subconscious or my body just decided for me, this is it, the race is done, let's just back out of this one. Now, when I came to, I do think there may have been a 10-second or so gap, which is a little bit worrying. Of course, like, you never want to black out, but I do think that this may be just sort of a precursory action that my body took to sort of prevent any more damage. Now, of course, I'm surprised by this because I wasn't running that fast. I wasn't running 3-minute Ks when I should have been running 3:20s. I was running pretty much bang on a pace that I thought was, holdable for that time, or at least durable. And I think what had actually happened was I had way more fatigue from my marathon than I first initially thought. And actually mentally, I had burnt so many matches on that marathon day, fulfilling my target, holding that pace, that actually by the time I'd come back to racing on that start line, maybe I only had 1 or 2 matches left out of the 20 that are usually ready to go when I'm nice and rested. And I think that day I just pushed it too far. So walking back to that car that day without a medal, I did feel a bit disappointed, but there was something in me that just said, you know what, the DNF isn't as bad as you might have thought. And that really was how I felt. I had always dreaded DNFing. I've felt so bad in so many sessions and so many park runs and so many races, but I've always managed to grit it out and stick to it. And I'm proud of that, of course. But actually, when I DNF'd that day, of course, there's a part of me that reminds myself that actually I didn't make the decision, my body did this for me. But the fact was I was able to push myself to a point where my body couldn't handle it. And for that, I'm proud. I think when it comes to DNF, of course, I'm not hoping to DNF in the future, and I certainly won't make it easy for myself to DNF, but I think the massive thing for me, and I hope something that we can share as casual runners, if you're a professional, if you're sub-elite, maybe there's something a little bit different here, but for me, running is simply for fun. I make these videos purely for fun, to share my findings and to have a bit of a conversation. It's only that. This isn't my living. This isn't my bread and butter. Really, I've never been trained in this. And when it comes to it, I've got to just at the end of the day smile and be thankful for what I get from running. Now, I don't really think it's worth putting my life on the line for, basically to avoid a DNF and to finish. I don't think it is. I don't think the medal that day for me was worth any more pain. I don't think it was worth getting up and grueling it to the end, possibly risking something much bigger and much more dangerous. It's not worth it to me. And I feel like that is a really good reminder to myself. And actually I say reminder, but it was more of a lesson because I hadn't even processed that up until that point. So not the best bit of news to report, but I, at least think that there was a massive experience to be gained there. So hopefully on future weekly workout wraps, we could have some better race news, and I'm sure that my weekly workout wrap in 6 weeks, or so time after my half marathon will be a bit more positive. But I would love to hear from you guys. Have you enjoyed this format of video? If you have, of course, leave me a comment down below, leave me a like, and do keep an eye out for the weekly workout wrap channel that will be updated every week as I move through my training. Now, I should mention that I've left some links down below to all of the gear that I like running in, including my running watch, the sunglasses I like to wear, the protein shake I like to use, etc. And if you purchase anything through Amazon after clicking that link, then I will get a small kickback. So I'd really appreciate that. And also, while I'm here, I should tell you guys about the Patreon I've set up. The Patreon allows you guys to have early access to videos, but also to ask me any question you like in a Discord server. There's a couple of cheap options on there. If you can help me out, I absolutely would appreciate it. All of that money will be put back into the channel, into improving the quality of these videos. But that is all for weekly workout wrap episode number 1. Thank you all dearly for watching, and I'll see you in the next.